G.K. Chesterton was one of the most physically imposing men in English letters, 6 feet 4 inches tall, weighing somewhere close to 300 pounds, striding through London in a cape and a battered hat with a sword stick under his arm. The priest he created was his exact opposite in every particular: tiny, round-shouldered, shabby, and so easily overlooked that criminals never thought to fear him. That contradiction was not an accident. It was the whole secret of Father Brown, and it is far from the only one.
Kembleford's very own 221B Baker Street.
Fact 1. He built his own opposite. G.K. Chesterton was impossible to miss. In an era of smaller men, he was physically enormous, broad, loud, perpetually overflowing with ideas and laughter. The kind of man who filled every room he entered. He dressed for effect too: the great cape, the crumpled hat, the sword stick. When Chesterton walked down Fleet Street, people noticed. Father Brown, whom he began writing in 1910, was designed as his deliberate inverse. Where Chesterton was unmissable, Father Brown was utterly forgettable. Where Chesterton was imposing and theatrical, the priest was drab, shuffling, and apparently vacant. Chesterton wanted a detective so ordinary that no criminal would ever identify him as a threat so unremarkable that he could stand in the middle of a crime and simply be ignored. This was a literary strategy, but it was also a philosophical one. Chesterton believed that the truly dangerous mind was the one that nobody suspected, that real wisdom tended to hide behind apparent simplicity. Father Brown embodied that idea so completely that readers rarely stopped to notice the paradox at the heart of the series, that one of the most intellectually formidable characters in detective fiction was created in the precise image of his creator's opposite. What Chesterton gave Father Brown, in other words, was a kind of camouflage, not a disguise exactly, but a studied ordinariness so complete that it became, in itself, a form of power. The bumbling priest with the battered umbrella was always the most dangerous person in any room. He simply never looked it.
Kembleford needs somebody more open-minded.
Oh, so you're very happy to employ women, just not to serve them.
Fact 2. Written for money. Almost lost. Father Brown made his debut in the Strand magazine in September 1910 in a story called The Blue Cross. It was the same publication that had launched Sherlock Holmes onto the world. But where Conan Doyle had conceived Holmes as a long-running serial detective from the outset, Chesterton's approach was far more casual. He needed the fee. He wrote the story quickly, sent it in, and did not especially expect it to change his life. Chesterton's real vocation, in his own eyes, was journalism. He was one of the most prolific and celebrated commentators of his era, a writer of essays, criticism, poetry, and theology, who happened also to produce fiction. Father Brown was, for most of his career, something of a sideline, a reliable source of income that he returned to whenever the spirit or the bank balance moved him. What he could not have anticipated was how persistently readers would demand more. Over the following 25 years, he produced 53 Father Brown stories in all, collected across 5 volumes. He did not write them in a sustained creative burst, but in irregular clusters, fitting them around his journalism, his debates, his theology. The little priest arrived in the world almost by accident and became the thing his creator is most remembered for. The Blue Cross itself set the template so completely that very little needed to change across those 5 decades. Flambeau, the master criminal, is there from the first page. Father Brown's method, reasoning inwards from morality rather than outwards from evidence, is established at once. A story dashed off for a magazine fee turned out to contain, fully formed, almost everything the series would ever need.
Good, that's settled then.
Fact 3. His name was a secret. Across all 53 of Chesterton's Father Brown stories, the priest's first name appears almost not at all. He is Father Brown from the very first page to the very last. Chesterton treated the absence as a matter of course, never drawing attention to it, and most readers never noticed. The surname was sufficient. It was ordinary enough to feel complete. In one story, The Hammer of God, the name Paul surfaces briefly. It is mentioned in passing, not underlined, and disappears again almost immediately, leaving no trace in the stories that follow. Scholars of the stories have noted it. Most readers, encountering the tales in order, would sail straight past it without registering anything unusual. The BBC television series, running now into its 13th series, follows the same convention. Mark Williams's Father Brown, always Father Brown. Nobody in Kembleford calls him Paul. Nobody seems to know that the name exists. The show has inherited from the stories a quality of deliberate anonymity, a priest so selfless that even his own identity has been quietly set aside. This is, on reflection, exactly right. Father Brown's power comes from his ordinariness, from his refusal to be particular or prominent. A fully named character with a defined personal history would be slightly less universal. By remaining almost nameless, he stays available, a figure that any parish, any era, any viewer can recognize without needing to pin down. Fact 4. Written from a faith crisis. When Chesterton began the Father Brown stories in 1910, he was not yet a Roman Catholic. His conversion would not come until 1922, 12 years later, after a long and sometimes agonizing journey that absorbed much of the most productive period of his writing life. He was, during all of that time, circling a church he was not yet inside, drawn to it, wrestling with it, and not quite ready to commit. Father Brown already had the certainty that Chesterton was still searching for. The priest's faith is absolute and untroubled, not naive, but settled. He acts from a fixed moral center that his creator, in those same years, had not yet fully found for himself. There is something quietly poignant in this. A writer giving his fictional creation the spiritual clarity that remained, for a long time, just out of his own reach. Father O'Connor, the real priest who inspired the character, was instrumental in the eventual conversion. He and Chesterton had been friends and correspondents for nearly 2 decades by the time Chesterton formally entered the church. In 1922, the same year his wife Ada had converted, a year after his beloved secretary Dorothy Collins had done likewise, O'Connor performed the ceremony himself. So the stories trace, in a way their readers rarely notice, a spiritual autobiography. Father Brown was Chesterton's way of living inside a faith he was still approaching from the outside, and the character's moral certainty was, for years, a form of consolation as much as a literary device. The priest knew things his creator was still learning. Fact 5. The Lady Who Vanished. When Father Brown launched on BBC One in January 2013, one of its most distinctive characters was Lady Felicia Montague, the glamorous aristocrat played by Nancy Carroll. Witty, worldly, and frequently more useful than the local police, Lady Felicia became one of the series' most popular figures almost immediately, and then, after 4 series, she was gone. Carroll left the show, following Series 4 in 2015, to pursue other work, including a significant theatre career. The production did not make a great deal of noise about her departure. There was no dramatic farewell episode, no closure storyline. Lady Felicia simply ceased to appear, and a new character, Bunty Windermere, described as Lady Felicia's cousin, arrived to fill the space she had occupied. This has become something of a pattern for the series. Father Brown has quietly cycled through several prominent female characters across its run, replacing departing cast members with new additions who slot into the ensemble without disrupting the fundamental dynamic. The show's warmth and its central performance are sturdy enough to absorb considerable change around the edges. Nancy Carroll has continued to work steadily in theatre and television since leaving. She has spoken warmly of her time on the series. But for viewers who discovered the show in its earliest series and fell in love with Lady Felicia, her absence remains one of the quiet mysteries of a program that otherwise likes to tie everything neatly together. If you're enjoying this, it would mean a lot if you subscribed. It helps us keep making videos like this one. Just hit that button and you'll never miss a new one. Fact 6. The pandemic nearly ended it. By the time the COVID-19 pandemic struck in early 2020, Father Brown had completed 8 series and established itself as one of the most reliable performers in the BBC daytime schedule. None of that history protected it when filming on Series 9 was abruptly halted as lockdown came into force. Cameras stopped, the crew dispersed, The Cotswolds locations went quiet. The BBC faced a decision that every long-running drama faced in those months, whether to restart production when conditions allowed or to use the interruption as a natural conclusion. For a show entering its 9th series, cancellation was a genuine possibility. The institution tends to find endings easier than continuations, and the pandemic provided ready-made cover. The production chose to restart. Series 9 was eventually completed, the cast and crew reassembled, and filming resumed under strict COVID protocols. The series aired successfully, audience figures held, and the renewal decisions that followed led directly to the double-digit series count the show has now reached. The significance of that decision extends further than Father Brown itself. It was the continuation of the show that kept Lorna Watson's sister Boniface on screen long enough to generate the audience response that eventually produced a full spin-off series. Without the choice to restart filming in a pandemic, there would be no Sister Boniface mysteries. The 200 countries currently watching that show are, in a direct line, the beneficiaries of a production decision made in an uncertain 2020. Fact 7. She started as one episode. Sister Boniface Mysteries is now a fully independent series, broadcast in more than 200 countries and running into its own multi-series future. She has her Vesper, her laboratory, her fictional village of Great Slaughter, and a devoted international following built entirely on her own merits. None of this was planned. She arrived in a single episode of Father Brown as a supporting character and was not expected to outlast the week. Lorna Watson first appeared as the forensically gifted nun in Series 5 of Father Brown. The character landed immediately. Her combination of scientific precision, gentle eccentricity, and complete moral certainty created something distinct within an already distinctive world. Audience reaction was strong enough that the producers began discussing possibilities they had not previously considered. The development that followed took years. A spin-off requires a different commissioning process, a different production model, and a convincing case that the character can sustain a series without the parent show's established framework to lean on. UK TV and BritBox eventually gave the green light, and Sister Boniface Mysteries launched in 2022, 6 years after the character's first appearance in a single guest slot. Watson has described the journey as one of the stranger experiences of her career, a character she played for 1 week becoming, years later, the lead in her own internationally distributed series. Father Brown did not merely launch a successful show, it created an entire second universe that now runs independently alongside it, reaching audiences in countries where Father Brown itself has never aired. Fact 8. Never out of print. The Innocence of Father Brown, the first collection of stories, was published in 1911. It has been in continuous publication for more than 110 years. Through 2 world wars, the collapse of the literary world that Chesterton inhabited, the deaths of everyone who knew him, and the complete transformation of the reading public, Father Brown has remained consistently available. No edition has ever been allowed to lapse. This is more unusual than it sounds. Most fiction, even celebrated fiction, goes in and out of print as fashions change and publishers reassess their catalogues. Chesterton's other work, his novels, his essays, his extraordinary journalism, has had a more uneven afterlife, beloved by those who seek it out, but not always easy to find in ordinary bookshops. Father Brown has never had that problem. The BBC series has driven a significant new wave of readers to the original stories. Libraries report renewed demand whenever a new television series airs. Publishers have reissued the collected stories in multiple editions to meet it. Chesterton earned relatively modest sums from the stories. During his lifetime, the bulk of his income came, as it always had, from journalism. He could not have imagined that The Little Priest would still be earning, and still finding new readers, nearly 90 years after his death. The stories are currently available in more than 30 languages. New translations continue to appear. In markets where the television series has built a following, the United States, Australia, Italy, Germany, the books have followed the audience, and the audience has frequently followed the books back. After more than a century, the readership is larger than it has ever been. Fact 9. The village that doesn't exist. Viewers who know the show will know Blockley, the real Gloucestershire village whose honey-coloured streets and Norman church stand in for the fictional Kembleford. What is far less widely known is that the interior world of the series, the rooms and corridors where much of the drama actually plays out, is filmed somewhere else entirely. The production uses a split filming model familiar to any student of classic British television. Location work happens in the Cotswolds. Interior scenes, Father Brown's presbytery, the police station, the drawing rooms of the great houses are filmed at production facilities in the Midlands. The exterior Blockley and the interior Kembleford are two different places assembled into a single coherent world in the editing suite. This is not unique to Father Brown. All Creatures Great and Small famously shot its Yorkshire exteriors on location while building its interiors in a BBC studio in Birmingham. Many of the Midsummer Murders village streets exist in Buckinghamshire, while the interiors were assembled elsewhere. British television drama has always been, to a greater extent than audiences realise, a geography constructed in the cutting room rather than on the ground. The result is a Kembleford that is more consistent and more charming than any real village could sustain across 13 series and well over 100 episodes. The Cotswolds light is real, the church tower is real. The murder rate is fictional, and the seamless interior world that makes it all feel like a single place is, in the tradition of British television, a very beautiful illusion. Fact 10. 10 episodes, 10 weeks. Father Brown is, by the standards of British television drama, produced at extraordinary speed. Each series runs to 10 episodes. Those 10 episodes, each running to roughly 45 minutes, are filmed in a compressed window of approximately 10 weeks. That is the equivalent of producing a feature film a week, same cast, same locations, same production team, week after week. Mark Williams has compared it to repertory theatre, the tradition of a resident acting company that performs a different play each week. The same core group of actors assembles each series, falls back into their characters with minimal preparation, and produces at a pace that would be unthinkable on a prestige drama shot at conventional speed. The efficiency is what makes 13 series financially possible. The writers have had to develop their own rhythm to match it. Each episode needs a self-contained mystery, a sufficient number of suspects, a satisfying resolution, and enough forward movement in the ensemble relationships to keep regular viewers engaged. At 10 episodes, a series across 13 series, the writing team has collectively constructed well over 100 individual mysteries, all of them set in the same small Cotswold village without running obviously out of road. That this is possible at all is, in the end, a tribute to the durability of Chesterton's original idea. A detective who solves crimes through understanding people rather than accumulating evidence never runs out of material because the varieties of human nature never run out. Father Brown does not need new forensic techniques or more sophisticated criminals. He just needs more people and more reasons why ordinary lives go wrong. After more than a century, that supply shows no sign of exhausting itself.